I get the sense that $100,000 went to two things, and they rhyme with hookers and blow. Thanks so much for making time for this interview. I've reached out to you in the past to ask you about the blog post that you made on zcoin.io, comparing different privacy protocols. I'm thoroughly impressed by the collection of privacy protocols and the comparison that you've broken down there. And so thank you for making time to talk over the Zcoin project in depth with me.
Yeah, and thanks so much for having me. And I think we really tried hard, to make that as fair as possible, that privacy comparison. And I hope, well, I haven't seen any violent oppositions to it. So I guess we've done a good job.
Well, we'll see. 2020 is the year of privacy. So I think this is the year where hopefully there's some substance to any criticism you get back.
I don't know. 2019, 2002, they said it was a year of privacy, and then became the year of cracking down on privacy. So we'll see.
I mean, it's also the year of TikTok. So user behavior is unpredictable. So let's talk a little bit in a couple different categories here. Let's talk about the project, then let's talk about proof of work or consensus in general. Let's talk about privacy, and then let's talk about some privacy opinions. Just some things that I'd like to ask you, just kind of personal opinion. They don't have anything to do with the project. They don't have anything to do with any kind of design or development choices that the Zcoin team is making. It's just Reuben talking about privacy opinions. But starting with the project, the total coin supply versus the available coin supply, and then the total proposed coin supply for Zcoin.
So yeah, we have basically, I mean, we follow Bitcoin supply schedule. We started with a 10-minute block time, and now it's 5 minutes. So there's a bit of difference in the emission, but basically we halve every 4 years, and we currently have 9 million issued out of a total of 21.4 million. And the 0.4 is because very, very early on, I think in the first few months of Zcoin, we did have a vulnerability where there was inflation that happened. And, that was fully disclosed, and we suffered from that. But we decided, rather than forfeit innocent people's coins and people who bought these coins on exchanges with their real money, I think the lesser evil then was to allow that slight inflation versus forfeiting people's money. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. And I think I asked you before we went live here about when will the last Zcoin be emitted in the final block reward?
So I guess we started in 2000. God, I have to make this calculation again. So, we started in 2016, and so I guess 7 years after Bitcoin. So I guess that would be something like 2,140 or 50, something like that. Yeah.
Okay, got it. So it's going to be quite some time after most of us are gone.
Yeah.
So transactions per second. How much transaction carrying capacity does Zcoin have?
We aren't making any sort of special innovations in that regard. We can take 4 times Bitcoin's throughput, which is basically because we have a 5-minute block time and a 2 megabyte block size. So we aren't claiming that we have any scalability things, because we are privacy specialists, and we do feel that if we have that level of transactions, I think we already can be considered a big success. So we're not ruling out higher TPS, but that's not really our focus right now.
Got it. In terms of allowing higher throughput, do you foresee there ever being a need, or do you foresee there ever being an effort on the Zcoin team's part to pursue either second layer solutions or to pursue scalability as a primary goal?
I do think that scalability is a solution that needs to be resolved, but I do feel that the problem today is privacy. Easily Bitcoin can easily increase its throughput by 2 or 3 times or 4 times or even 8 times relatively easily. And I do feel that with the improvement of internet speeds and storage capability, block sizes aren't that big of an issue. But of course, if we're talking about Visa level transactions, stuff like Merkle trees and ZK rollup, or even layer 2 solutions, they're all really promising, but I don't think we have a clear winner just yet. And I think it's really dangerous to distract ourselves from what our goal is. And that's kind of the beauty of open source, right? We focus on what we're good at, and we all collectively benefit. If people want to use Zcoin technology for privacy, we can use other people's technology for scalability. And I think that's how open source should develop, rather than trying to do everything from scratch. Yeah.
Awesome. Totally agree. So it sounds like then the main goal, the mission is absolutely just privacy.
Yeah, I mean, like, our blocks aren't full. Like, Bitcoin Cash has big blocks, or Bitcoin SV has big blocks. They're far from full, so we rather like solve like the leaking engine rather than build like the highways which are empty.
That's a great analogy. So I'm curious about the genesis of this project. When it initially started, was there any kind of personal problem or personal pain that was being solved by your founding team? And did you just say like, this isn't my own itch and I need to scratch it because privacy isn't done well enough?
So Reuben, he actually was the founder of Zcoin. So Zcoin was like a long time ago. I think at one point it was like number 8 market cap, a long time ago. And he was trying to solve the whole ASIC resistance problem, because I think, he felt that, there should be like equal opportunity to mine coins, and he felt that ASICs were a problem for that, and that's how he came out with Zcoin. But when he actually wanted to add privacy on it, so he actually went to Johns Hopkins University, and he actually studied under Matthew Green, who's one of the founding scientists of Zcash. And at that point in time, the Zerocoin paper was released, and he found it really interesting and said like, I really want to build something on this. At that time, Zerocash there was no paper yet. And he actually then built his master's project on thinking about how to do a practical implementation of Zerocoin, including, how to do the trusted setup and all this type of things. And so I do think that it wasn't really like a personal thing. It was more of like, this is really interesting. I do think this is a problem, and therefore I really want to build something on it. And he actually tried to kind of do it on a merge mine coin with Zcoin, but the community weren't too keen, and he needed funding to continue doing this, and that's kind of how the Zcoin project started.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay. I wasn't even aware of that. I'm a huge fan of the concept of merge mining, and in part because I'm a huge fan of crypto notes as well. And as part of the crypto note spec, it's actually called out in the crypto note white paper, is that there's merge mining kind of urged of many projects there. So that's really cool to hear. And it's kind of a bummer to hear that the Zcoin team or community at that time didn't want to do merge mining.
It's not that they felt like Zerocoin was too experimental and stuff like that, which fair enough. But yeah, I guess like, Reuben is like, I left it in good hands, MIT guy, and it's going to be maintained by James Lovejoy. I think he's still currently the lead maintainer of Zcoin, and I'll go and work on this other project then. So I think that's fair. Yeah,
no, for sure. And then Zcoin and their community they've got a very loyal community. I think I spoke to them about 14 months ago.
Wow.
And,
okay.
Yeah, it's been a little bit of time, but it was right as I think they were attempting to fork their proof of work algorithm to stave off ASICs yet again.
Yep, I remember something like that.
So
I think they have a similar strategy to when Zcoin first started, which was to have a certain element of the proof of work algorithm to be something dependent on the block height or something like that. So yeah.
Okay, cool. So as far as there being a unique technological advantage or benefit to Zcoin today with deployed features that are available right now, what sets Zcoin apart?
So, I guess like the idea is that, first of all, there aren't actually that many privacy protocols that develop their own privacy protocols, or even code their own implementations. I guess it's like Monero, Zcash, and us. I think that's basically it. I guess you can say Grin and Beam are like, pioneers in the Mimblewimble space. But at the same time, they didn't create the protocol themselves. So it was from that paper themselves. So I guess that,
but to be fair, Monero is kind of their champions of the crypto note spec.
But the CryptoNote spec has changed so much that it's no longer really CryptoNote. You know, it's been like Ring CT, and it's like almost like Monero-esque. There's been so much improvements on it. So I'm not saying that. So I do think that they've been, you know, they have their own research labs as well. So that's quite cool.
I guess I kind of wonder. I wonder if the Grin team, if they'll be able to hit critical mass in terms of community participation or lead dev participation.
I do think that they're in a really good state. Like they had really good PR and they had huge community behind it. I do feel that a lot of it was through misunderstanding of the technology, like, you know, selling the whole no addresses feature when, you know, it's not really a feature. It's a bad thing. Like, you know, I do feel that
it's definitely hampered adoption. I can say that for sure.
Yeah. I mean, like, you know, Monero's self-address thing is a much preferred method of solving this issue of address reuse, and rather than having no addresses at all, which isn't really true because there are unique points that you can see A transfer to B. You just can't reuse those again. So it is like addresses, except you can't reuse them. So I do think it's
By the same token, that also does force really good wallet hygiene or address hygiene. So it's
you could use self-addressing.
Exactly. No, totally agreed. I see your point. I definitely see your point. And just offering counterpoint there, it's kind of weird how sometimes in order to make some advancements, you wind up breaking stuff, right? It's like making an omelet, cracking eggs. So we can
talk more about that later.
Sounds good. As far as the team, who on your team makes Zcoin unique? And I think we chatted a little bit offline about this, but I'm going to pull up your team roster right now on the Zcoin page and go ahead and share it to the screen. But who on your team would you say makes Zcoin unique?
Well, you know, first of all, I think like Permin kind of like started the whole thing. He was the one that was like for ASIC resistance, and he was the one that kind of like coded the first like implementation of Zero Coin, right? It was a bit rough. And he's also been like, you know, he was the one, the stuff that we did in the Thai Democrat Party elections, that was all Porman, and all the adoption efforts has been on him. So, you know, he's a really key role there. You know, I guess myself, you know, like.
Well, hey, here's the thing: if people haven't heard of the project, and if they don't use the project, then it dies. I mean, there are many coin projects that have gone chain dead because they weren't used.
Yes, definitely, and one of the things that he's been like recently, we tried to do something. We had like I guess like mixed success, and one of the things is that that was really cool was, so Thailand actually has something called PromptPay, and PromptPay is a QR code system that is almost half the population of Thailand has it, and basically that means, I don't know, maybe 30 million. I forgot the population of Thailand, but there are about like 2 to 3 million merchants, and this is rapidly growing because every time you open a new bank account, you are also given a PromptPay account. And the idea is that with this QR code, I can just send my money directly to you. And Permin found a way to, because he has a regulated exchange in Thailand, one of 2 of the remaining ones, and you can do the conversion to Zcoin, to Thai baht, and to the merchant in a couple of seconds. So that means it kind of makes Zcoin spendable nationwide. We actually had a video on this with box mining, and we had like mixed success because we kind of did it through like a reverse engineering method, and as a result, certain QR codes weren't supported. So right now, Pormin's been trying to work directly with a banking partner to see that we can get an official support so that we can support, like, now I think we support like 60% of the QR codes, but it's like a bit of a hassle to see, oh, does this QR code work? Does this QR code work or not? And you also need like a bank account with a particular bank. But once you have an official bank partner, then all of that just kind of goes away and it's just a smooth process. So we're trying to improve upon this. But you know, these are really like use cases of Zcoin in real life. And he has some really interesting things up his sleeve. There's some really big companies in Thailand that are looking to see how we can build Zcoin into their businesses, because especially with our new tokenization layer that allows people to build their own private tokens on it, or voting applications. So I think he's doing the right thing by pushing adoption.
Very, very cool. I'll tell you right now, if that goes live, I will personally use it to create the equivalent of SLX token on Zcoin, and I will fundraise for the next Tony Jaa movie because I know what the budgets are like between USD and Thai baht for a cinema production. I mean, just saying, if you had Tony Jaa like kicking somebody in the face and then using his phone to like scan a barcode with Zcoin, you guys would blow up. It'd be over.
That would be really cool. But yeah, so beyond that, I mean, Peter is our lead developer. I think he joined us maybe like 1 year in. He's the guy that does most of the core heavy lifting, and he's a unique combination of good coding skills and also deep cryptographic knowledge. Like he was actually the one that identified the flaw in the Zerocoin flaw. So I think that's really big. Even like cryptographers have been looking at it and stuff. They couldn't find it, and he managed to like dig in. And I think after like 2 weeks or so, he found the critical flaw. And I remember that when we disclosed it, even like the Zcash scientists were like, "Yeah, that's a particular tricky one to find." So kudos to him.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, and I noticed also here on what's listed on the team bios that Peter apparently got a CS degree from MSU, which is, I mean, MSU, I've noticed their work before, primarily in image processing, in motion image processing. And I mean, some of the most, really some groundbreaking stuff has come out of MSU in image processing, and consistently. It winds up hitting my radar in terms of like image processing libraries that can be folded into other products. So I'm not shocked to see that he's this very well-rounded, well-rounded developer.
And that's really cool. And of course we have a bunch of other developers, and I mean they all play really important roles. But I guess if I had to give it like a particular shout out, would be Aram Jivania, which is he does code, but he's more of a cryptographer, and he was the one that kind of came out with our lelantus privacy protocol, and he's been a great help. And like we originally engaged Aram to kind of find a way to remove trusted setup from a Zcash model, and I think we were speaking with Andrew Miller and a couple of other guys and from Zcash, and they were like saying, why didn't you try replacing ZK snuts with bulletproofs? And just for clarification, like a lot of people say we use bulletproofs. There are several ways to use bulletproofs. So the way that Monero uses it, the way that lelantus uses it, is that bulletproofs are only range proofs. That means they're only used to hide the values, but you can actually use them in more complex ways to prove almost any arbitrary zero knowledge proof statement. That means it's like a general purpose zero knowledge proof, which is what ZK Snuts does. So they said, why don't you replace ZK Snuts with bulletproof and see how that goes? And we hit our heads for like 3 months on it, and we found like we could do it, but it was like really inefficient. And I believe there are some projects that have been trying it out, like Dusk, and I think they're hitting into similar type of issues as well. And we were like really bummed because we had spent like a good amount of time and money trying to solve this and didn't get the results we want. And that's when we went back to an earlier paper called One of Many Proofs, which was previously dismissed as not having good enough performance. But then when we took it further and built lelantus off One of Many Proofs, and we actually found that using batching and a bunch of other tricks, we could get it to anonymity sets as high as 100,000. That was a really big breakthrough, and a lot of people thought it was really cool. So yeah, I think he's been really key in making Zcoin like a leading, not just like someone that implements stuff, but like actually contributing to research and the whole privacy space. Yeah.
Very, very cool. And I get the sense that your team is geographically very diverse as well, because either I'm looking at the last names here, and either your research team is based in Glendale, California, or they're Armenian.
Yeah, he's Armenian, and I only recently realized that Kim Kardashian is Armenian as well. But yeah, so he's based in Armenia. Tigran's also based in Armenia. Peter's in Russia. Puta and Panu are in Bangkok. I'm in Borneo in Malaysia. And we have a couple other guys here and there. So Tig is originally Irish, and now he's based in Hanoi, and I think he's planning to move again. So yeah, if you want to stop us, you have to drag us from all across the globe.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, thanks for sharing about the team. So I kind of, in these interviews, I love to talk about the team because I like sort of couching project evaluation or coin evaluation. And I ask viewers of the channel to think about coin evaluation in slightly more traditional startup terms. Looking at the team kind of matters. Like seeing who's contributing should matter to more people.
Definitely.
Instead of like, hey, you've got 15 different anon people who are on IRC saying maybe you should do this.
There's been like some people who say like, don't you find it weird that you're a privacy coin and yet all your people are public? I'm like, that shouldn't be a problem, right? That's yes, it adds some mystique, but like, look, Zuko is public. Like, okay, yeah, Fluffy isn't the founder, but he was like the lead maintainer for a very long time. That's not really a problem, and in a way, it keeps it accountable, right? You know how to look for when shit hits the fan, right? And
if the privacy coin works, if the protocol works, then you don't know how much they hold.
Yeah, exactly, and you shouldn't. The fact that we want to get that some level of decentralization, that even if you come up to me like, I can't do much, it's like, and especially I don't code, I'm not coder or anything like that, so yeah.
Cool.
And
I
that's
appreciate you.
Open source, yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate you giving kudos to some of the team members who've put transformative work or really, what's the word I'm looking for? Really high impact work into the code base.
Definitely.
So more on the project collabs. What other projects help you? And as far as giving back as well in those collabs, what other sorts of contributions have you made to other coin projects, or maybe discovering bugs or disclosing that there's been some kind of an issue in different protocols?
So I guess, I guess the first thing is that because we pioneered the zero coin protocol, and PivX then, of course, looked at implementation and was inspired by that. And of course, they did their own implementation, which was still inspired by us. But there were so many PivX forks. So what happened was, when there was a vulnerability in the actual zero coin vulnerability, the flaw, of course, we could have taken advantage of it and destroyed all these coins, but instead we went through the responsible disclosure route, which was to tell these coins, secure yourselves, and we are here, even though they are competitors, even though some of them have shit on us on the past, we decided to do the right thing. And I don't know, I still feel a bit, honestly, I'm not sure how I feel about that. I don't know if I would do responsible disclosures to other coins in the future, because how do I put this?
You're just going to take advantage of the exploits and
no, I'm not going to take advantage of it, but it's more of like, I don't feel like I owe them anything. I know that's kind of against the whole idea of open source, and some of the projects have also done responsible disclosures to us, and it'll be nice. But what actually happened was, when we did that previous disclosure, some guys, instead of thanking us, and they used it as we told them okay, keep your, we told them look, hey, look, there's this vulnerability here. Maybe you should keep your privacy disabled while we figure this out. And if we had not told them, they would have enabled it and allowed that hacker to come and hack them, right? And we could have done that, but we didn't. We told them, and the right thing to do was okay, let's all coordinate on the disclosure, wait for us because we are the ones that made the disclosure, and we wait for all the other projects to secure themselves to a decent degree before we disclose, right? Because once we disclose, all these people are vulnerable. But what happened was this one project kind of jumped the gun, decided to, I'll just name them PivX, and they made like a premature disclosure before everyone had secured themselves. Like Veil had not secured themselves fully yet, because what actually happened was PivX was they had something called a wrap serious bug, which wasn't really actually an issue with Zcoin itself. It was more of like an implementation issue on PivX end. And not to say that it was like, I'm not crapping on them, but this was a fact, and they had disabled Zcoin to fix that. And so they had not re-enabled it, but when we discovered this flaw and we were being attacked, we told PivX maybe it's good to just keep it disabled. And because they have something called Spox functionality, so what that means is that the development team can basically turn off and turn on the privacy features, which is very centralized. That's something that we have fought against, despite being how convenient it is. Like, if there are any vulnerability, switch it off, right? That's still freaking convenient, but it also makes it very centralized, right? Like if I can turn off features with a centralized control.
Yeah, that's a little bit scary. That's a little bit scary. Yeah. I think to a lot of coin holders in most projects.
Correct, especially as a privacy coin, like, and what happened was, then we disclosed, and then they came up with a statement like, we're not affected because it's disabled. I'm like, no, it means you. No, that's not, and then like you like bragging that you're not affected, and then like, hello, and because of that affected other projects security as well.
That's too bad. I can think of some really crass analogies, but maybe we should just stop talking about other projects.
But I do have to say that after that, someone called Jackie Man from PivX approached me to apologize and said it was a mistake. I don't know how much of a mistake it was. I felt that it was very targeted, but maybe there was some disconnect between marketing and the development team. But I just wanted to make sure that side of the story was out, that they believe it was a mistake and it was not intentional. But because of that incident and several others, like we actually disclosed this other coin, I forgot its name now, Gravity Coin and Bitcoin CZ, because they wanted to court favor with CZ of Binance. And we also disclosed to them, and they just keep on shitting on us and said that they patched vulnerabilities, and they just led us on this wild goose chase. So I don't know how much I feel about disclosing to projects that obviously can't give back to us. And all we asked when we disclosed a lot of these vulnerabilities, and even with Sigma, we actually had a vulnerability as well, which was thankfully not exploited. It was patched very quickly. And we also did the same thing, disclosed to other projects that were using Sigma. And all we asked was like, hey, if you could, maybe contribute like $1,000 or something to us, because we all hurting. It would be nice to have something like that. And instead of getting anything, we got $0. And I said, well, I know you guys are tight. Could you help us with some like other minor tasks? And they're like, we're all too busy. And after that whole experience, I was like, wow, this is really one way.
Sure. No, that's pretty tough. I think I understand your response now. Can I just ask, how many projects presently are using Sigma? Or
not quite. I think there are like 2 or 3, and like there's not really many. But yeah, so I don't think many people are using Sigma right now, especially when we are transitioning it off to lelantus. But yeah, I think there's like 2 or 3 projects currently using Sigma.
Got it. Okay. Let's talk about funding. When Zcoin was started and ongoing funding of the project, was there any kind of a pre-mine, insta-mine, secret mine, any kind of founder's reward change over time?
There was no pre-mine or insta-mine, but it depends how you feel about the founder's reward, which was not hidden. It's disclosed to everybody. So we actually started with quite a hefty founder's reward at 20%, and that was divided among 5 wallets. So I guess that's like 4% per wallet. And that basically were the 2 seed investors that gave us money to start up. And the 2 co-founders, which was, one of them was Poramin, and the other one, this guy is called Gary, who we pushed out of the project like 2 months later, because he basically, so Zcoin started, and we had, I think maybe about like 150 or 200,000 US dollars worth of funding. That's it. We didn't have any and that's all we got. I think it could have even actually been only 100,000. But what happened was that it was meant to have been shared between Poramin and Gary, and on the 50-50 split. But what happened was when Zcoin finally launched, Poramin was like, okay, yeah, where's my 50% share of the money that Gary got from the seed investors? And Gary was like, I want to make sure that you keep developing for us, so I'm going to break it down, give it to you over a period of 12 months. And like Poramin was like, this isn't kind of what we agreed, but I'm okay with that if you show me that you still have my money. Show me proof of funds. Right? And he couldn't. And yeah, that money could have been gone for whatever, right? And we were like, what do you do with all that money? I'm like, oh, like, what do you do with it? Like, I don't know. Like, Poramin was the only one coding. He didn't get much money. Like, I think maybe he got like $15,000 to work for like 1.5 years on it. It's like ridiculous, right? So and Gary wasn't really doing much in the project. Like, I came in like 1 month after the project like kind of launched, and I was trying to, say, hey Gary, people are asking stuff, and like he would like disappear for days on end, and I'll ask him what he's doing. He's like talking to investors. I'm like, okay, whatever.
I get the sense that $100,000 went to 2 things, and they rhyme with hookers and blow.
So I have no idea what happened to that, and we fought him out, and we got in a new investor, Tin, who managed to, because we had no money, right? All the money was gone, and we had to pay programmers and stuff like that. So this new guy came in and took over Gary's wallet and gave us not a lot of money, but enough to keep us going. And so that's kind of how it started. So I guess for the first 1 year, it was 20%, with 4% going to like a development promo wallet, and the rest going to the founders. But when Z Notes, Master Notes came about, when was that? Maybe like the end of 2017. So I guess it's about 1 year. I negotiated with the seed investors and say like, hey, look, if you want this coin to grow, you have to reduce your share. 4% is way too much, especially for the amount of money that you guys put in. Would you consider halving it to 2%? And they graciously agreed. So they halved their rewards to 2% and upped the DEF reward to 6%. So now it's currently 8% to the founders and 6% to the development reward. And it's not a lot of money as people think. Like, for 6% we get 13,000 Zcoin, and like $3 is like 50. That's not a lot. Yeah, like 50,000 to fund like a whole team of developers and cryptographers. It's not a lot.
For anybody who's had to shop development also, I can attest also. I recently had to shop development to outsourced shops, and I know how far that much money would get me.
Yeah,
building
not
anything
very
else.
much. Like, you try to hire that in Silicon Valley, maybe get 2 or 3 developers. That's it.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Or less. And so I guess like, but obviously a founder reward is, or like a development reward is not the best way to continue like a decentralized project. I do think it's great for bootstrapping, and I feel that it's a good way to say like, it's not an ICO where I get all the money up front and therefore I can just like bugger off and do nothing, right? And that's what's been happening with a lot of ICOs. Founder rewards are released over a period of 4 years, so it's almost like a vesting where I have to be I have to be involved in the project to reap my rewards. So I think that's fair. And we're coming to the end of that in September of this year. The founder rewards ends. And that means no more seed investors. We have been exploring alternative funding mechanisms like the crowdfunding ZCS, which is a fork of Monero CCS. And we forked it with Diego Salazar's help and Siphon. So that was really cool. It shows that that's a great idea. Let's adopt it, and that's great. But I think realistically, we probably may extend the development reward for maybe another 1 or 2 years just to tide us over. And as we start exploring alternative funding mechanisms, and if the ZCS becomes self-sustaining, we would remove the founder, we remove the dev. I think it's not right to call it founder's reward, the development reward altogether. Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you for giving the full picture there of funding. I think what's difficult for a lot of crypto projects is that we've got a little bit of a model in Silicon Valley and in the tech startup scene. We've got a little bit of a model in the free and open source software scene, but nothing really quite fits, right? Because there's this in the Venn diagram of cryptocurrency versus other technologies. It's like this overlap between free and open source software and between tech startups and between fintech, and you're kind of none of those things and all of them at once.
Yeah, and I do think that, like Monero has been really lucky in the sense that they've been able to fund almost everything through the CCS, but that's also because like they have really large whales that got really rich from Monero, and therefore they're willing to spend some money to protect their bags, and also it's in their interest to do so, right? And Green has also kind of like benefited because there are people who believe in the tech and willing to give like a 50 Bitcoin donation. So, and how sustainable is that? I don't know. Like, what happened if this like Monero whales stop donating? I know that for a fact that, despite the amazing work that Sarang is doing, Diego and all these other community managers have to keep on reminding people, please donate, please donate, please donate. And the Monero community is so huge, and even funding for them is not easy, right? It's a challenge, and that's the cost of decentralization. Whether that is sustainable in the long term, I think remains yet to be seen. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, but it's an interesting question. We talk about totally decentralized funding, but we have to think realistically whether that actually will work in the long run. Because I remember Green, for one time, they didn't have even enough money before that huge donation came in. They were like saying, where's the donations? Where's the work? And people weren't being funded. So
yeah, well, I want to say that the Grin founding team, or the Grin core dev team, was very explicit about their expectations, I think, in the proof of work space for voluntary founder or dev rewards, and they were snubbed by everybody.
Yeah.
Oh man.
So okay. I don't know. I think it's like a whole purist thing. And I feel that as long as you're upfront about it, there's an alignment of interests, and there's like decent decentralization as to, I think the only criticism of what I would say like a dev tax on the founders reward is that it does make it like centralized, that only this entity can get that tax, right? And I guess that's the only issue. It is a big issue, but that's why we're trying to be relying on different sources of funding like the ZCS as well.
Very cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. I can't wait to see where that goes. Do you have a bit of a timeline roadmap for it?
We actually have the ZCS up and running, and we actually have some projects being funded right now, like Coin Control for our new rich client, and someone donated like 852 Zcoin, which is quite a decent amount of money, which is like times 3.6, like $2,000 US. That's not bad. And we're aiming to start at like small tasks like community management stuff, and then move to more core tasks as time goes by.
Very, very cool. Well, I'm seeing it just now also, and I probably should have seen it before, that it's right there on the navigation, right next to contact, says crowdfunding. And yeah, there it is. Very cool. Well, let me ask you, as far as unique technological advantage to the Zcoin project, what would you say is, what are the beneficial features and the tech advantage that are on the roadmap in the near future?
Right. So, the advantages, I mean, I guess lelantus, which is our next gen privacy protocol, we are really really excited about that because it has all the benefits of like zero knowledge proof schemes, because like cryptographic mixers or like mixers in general, it's more like hiding in the crowd, while zero knowledge proofs it's almost like disappearing money and then reappearing at another place, which we feel is a superior model. And I feel that we do this without many of the so-called original issues with the early zero knowledge proof, like like Zcash, right, the most popular one right now, which is like trusted setup and very fancy crypto and like moon math. And even to today, it's like a very small subset of people actually fully understand Zcash. I mean, even Zuko says he doesn't really understand it, and he's pretty technical, right? And even cryptographers, have a hard time. Like, yeah, you can understand how it works, but like, the actual really details is really, really tough stuff. So I do feel that, we are having the privacy protocol where it's relatively simple in construction, makes it easier to audit, so it doesn't become something like security through obscurity. So one of the problems of like Zcash is that they're so reliant on the ECC, and like the Zcash Foundation has been really trying hard to build its own capabilities to kind of be less reliant on the ECC, right? But if the ECC disappeared, it'd be really, really hard for anyone to continue Zcash development because it's so specialized and it's so like exotic, right? While we want our protocol to be like, more or less like people can adopt it and it can be maintained even you remove all of us because it's simple enough. And I think that's a very underestimated value, because if you believe in open source, if you believe in like, this open protocols, it still has to be approachable enough so that other developers can come in and work on it, right? And not just one entity. And that's kind of centralization in its own form. And I think people underestimate that.
Yeah, totally agreed. Open source, we all stand on the shoulders of giants. I mean, good grief, the fact that we're recording this right now, right? I mean, and WebRTC and all the other technologies that have gone into the open source or that are available libraries for anybody to pick up and have an application like what we're using at this moment to communicate between Borneo and the United States. If there weren't generous people in the past helping to, pave these roads, then we wouldn't be here. So.
So I actually forgot to mention about what lelantus enables. So lelantus enables people to burn arbitrary amounts. That means I can burn 10.76 coins and redeem maybe a fraction like 2.3 coins, and all that's hidden. Amounts are also hidden, and I can, instead of like right now with Sigma or even like with the previous Zerocoin protocol, I always had to redeem it. That means like if I burn 10 coins, I have to redeem it 10 coins, and I have to show that redemption has happened, that 10 coins appear somewhere. But lelantus allows me to do a direct anonymous transfers, and what that means is that I can pass the right to redeem to you. It means that actually potentially increases my anonymity set, because it means that when I'm redeeming, I'm not just the people that actually burn coins. I could be someone that just received it from someone without having ever burned any coins myself. And that's a very, very huge privacy improvement. That means I can pass the right to redeem to someone, and that's almost like perfect privacy, because you hide the amounts, you hide the source. With the receiver stuff, there's still some ongoing task, but we're not so exactly sure how that works, but we can talk about that in your later questions.
Yeah, no, very cool. I think what's funny is that I think a lot of people, I mean, myself included, as a layperson, I think a lot of us, we somehow view privacy-oriented coin projects as, it's almost like magic, a bit like how lelantus is designed to work on your roadmap. And we just have this idea that like, my coin supply disappears and it reappears somewhere else. And there's not very great understanding, I think, of whether or not the origin address is countenanced or the destination address is countenanced, or if the amounts are known, or if the time of transaction can be used against people on the network to discover their identity. So that sounds like it's going to be a pretty great addition. On privacy, the deep dive. No, I just got ahead of myself. Let's talk about proof of work and consensus in general. What percentage of the block reward goes to miners? Because you're currently a proof of work project.
Yeah, I think 56% of it goes to proof of work mining, 30% goes to masternodes or znodes, and 8% goes to the founders, and 6% goes to the development reward. I hope that adds up. Yeah, 56. Yes, correct.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, it all adds up. So are there any other consensus mechanisms used by Zcoin?
Right now, we have in our roadmap, hopefully something this year. I mean, yes, it is proof of work, but we're planning to implement something called chain locks that's from Dash, and that would allow the master nodes to kind of secure the chain against 51% attacks, because they kind of act like almost like a notarization, I guess. It's like, they make sure there's no double spend attacks. And what that means is that you have all the distributed powers of proof of work, while at the same time you have you need to compromise the master nodes quite a lot. So you have to acquire a lot of Zcoin as well to be able to do that. So I do think that's a nice balance of security. But
got it. So you're bringing up the concept of notarization. I apologize for the interruption. The only other projects that I've heard this concept of notarization on proof of work used is in DPoW. The projects that have inherited DPoW from Komodo, because there are several now that have adopted it.
Yeah. So what my views of that? I mean,
I should ask, how does it compare to DPoW?
It's a bit hard to compare, but I would say that I feel that, the master nodes are a lot easier to enter in. It's almost like I just need money and I can enter in, right? Well, with the way that DPoW works, is that you kind of have to be voted in, and there's a lot of issues with like voting and all that stuff. Like, how do you make sure it's fair? How should you make sure there's no collusion and stuff like that? While here, it's almost like I just need a VPS and some Zcoin, and I can enter into that. So I feel like that's, I guess, fairer, and it's harder to. There's less barriers to entry, and what that means is that your validator set is a lot more. That means it's harder to compromise a more diverse group of people rather than rigging a vote. So I do feel that like DPoW is interesting. I don't agree that it offers the exact same security as Bitcoin, because at the end of the day, you are trusting the federation or the notary nodes. I mean, I guess Komodo people might disagree on that, but you're just moving the trust from like the miners to this set of nodes. I don't think that's necessarily wrong, but people just have to understand that it's a different security model than let's say. So I do think that master nodes are quite nice in the sense that, yes, you have a stake in the project. Therefore, hopefully, it's kind of like proof of stake, right? Why would you screw your own holdings over? But at the same time, they alone cannot determine what transactions go in. It is the miners who do that.
Sure. So, I mean, I think that's probably a great conversation to have for another time. I don't think that I possess enough vocabulary and knowledge of economics to be able to articulate an argument for why you would. But it seems like certainly the CIA loves to do it, create economic instability in other countries. And so there could be somebody somewhere who maybe has weird incentive.
I guess the idea is you want to make your security dependent as diverse groups as possible, right? So like if it's proof of work, you're only depending on the miners, which may or may not be good. So if I say like now it's the miners and the people who hold a lot of coins or Zcoin, then I feel like that's a nice in between. That means you have both. Like proof of stake has that whole nothing at stake problem that maybe you collude and like. Now like Ethereum has this like slasher and all this really complex things to kind of resolve that. Well, I feel like, you still have proof of work that the miners determine what transactions go in, but the master nodes prevent any sort of double spend attacks, which is fine. Like there are very, very, very few cases where you would want to issue a conflicting transaction unless like the block is full and you somehow didn't put enough fees. That's only like legitimate use case. What other legitimate use case is a double spend or a conflicting transaction? Most likely it's nefarious.
Sure. Awesome. Well, I'm curious, just on that note of the roadmap item with the chain locking, what kind of additional computational burden would this place on your masternodes, and will that be compensated in block reward?
I mean, like, we aren't planning to change the percentage of the block reward. I mean, currently it's 30% of block reward, and that means that translates to like 16-17% per annum. So that's a lot. And even after halving, we aren't planning to change that, and that means it's down to 8%, which isn't bad either. So I feel that the computation requirements, I wouldn't say are significant in that regard.
Okay, so you're not flipping into like from masternode into like some kind of enhanced service node that has 16 cores and a bazillion gigs of RAM.
Yeah, but the thing is that we do want we do want for nodes to be multi-core, just because we feel that if we're going to go on privacy on by default, we want to be able to take advantage of this parallelization for this batch processing. For the moment, there isn't any, like, because we aren't hitting those type of scaling bottlenecks. But I mean, if we are paying masternodes, they should be willing to update the infrastructure. I mean, that's part of the whole deal, right? We have some ideas, maybe not in the short term, but they might be options. Like, let's say that I want to run this on a really like shitty computer or like a Raspberry Pi, and I'm like, okay, I still want to validate blocks. I still want to keep the whole entire blockchain, but I'm okay with trusting a group of masternodes to give me the anonymity set and give me information about like lelantus or sigma, so that I don't have to do the calculation myself. And I can choose to trust that group of things if I want to. I can choose to validate it myself, but if like a really light powered computer, I can choose to trust the masternodes as well. So we're thinking of some ways that the masternodes can serve certain information to other people as well, but nothing concrete yet. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Very cool. So that sounds like it's going to be a really interesting development to keep track of in terms of, as opposed to, for example, saying, hey, all of our master nodes are actually service nodes and they need to be so robust and we're going to do challenges, but they're not actually really doing anything, as we see on some other networks.
Correct. Correct.
That's really cool. Question about block reward. Is there any other percentage of block reward given to anyone else? I think you already answered. All the block reward percentage adds up.
Yes.
I apologize, just on the list of questions.
Worries. Yeah.
And do you foresee any kind of consensus changes in this year or maybe next calendar year?
So currently, I mean, like, based on the current code, all the development and founder reward ceases at mid-September, right? That means it becomes 70% proof of work and 30% Z nodes. So that's what happens if nothing changes. However, I mean, on the forums, we've been really like pushing for opinions on people like, do you guys want like no funding? We just rely on the ZCS or something like that. And so far everyone's like, no, we still need you guys. Perhaps you have 10% of the block reward to continue development. We internally are thinking of maybe an extension of 1 or 2 years, just to keep us accountable. We don't want to extend that mandate for too long while we explore other types of ways for decentralized funding. But we really want to make sure that we launch lelantus this year and, continue building that. And so whatever happens to us, even if we start developing, like Zcoin will be in a really good state. I mean, that's our goal. We don't want to be here forever. I mean, yeah, sure, if I can keep on working on it, that'll be great. But there has to be other bloods and other opportunities for other people to come on board. And we haven't had a clear solution. I mean, we've talked about quadratic voting, which requires identity, which is like kind of against privacy. And then we've seen like a lot of on-chain voting. I don't know where's that in your question, but you can talk about some of the issues of the governance.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's actually, I don't have a question here, but I would love to talk about that because it's worthy of attention from every coin project. But let's ask about, in terms of proof of work, CPUs, GPUs. In my mind, the progression tends to go CPU, then GPU, generally speaking, FPGAs come out, and then an ASIC appears.
Right.
Where is all, like, with proof of work with regards to Zcoin? What's the history there, and then where's it going? And what does your project view as a reasonable decentralization of hash rate, and how do you think you achieve that?
Right. So, I mean, like, originally, I guess we had a similar view as Monero, where we thought like CPUs were the most accessible, right? And because everyone has a CPU, if you have a computer, you have a CPU. And we thought that was the best way, but we failed to realize how significant botnets could be, and how significant stuff like cloud mining, where you could get like discounted credits to do all of this sort of stuff. And when we were a CPU mineable only coin, we were basically raped by botnets and all this cloud mining thing. So that was definitely defeating the whole point of ASIC. We might as well just be embracing ASICs at that point in time, right? Like if it's only a few people getting it. So we then moved to like GPU friendly, and we tried with MTP to get. So the whole MTP is actually based off a paper called Egalitarian Computing, which was meant to be that CPUs and GPUs were at around the same level. And we found that perhaps was a bit naive on their part on the design of it, and still GPUs are much more preferable than MTP. And that's kind of what happens when like cryptographers or like software guys without much hardware background try to develop algorithms. And yeah, I mean, this is something that we've suffered, right? But I do think that MTP has served its point, its purpose, in the sense that it's still very profitable. I mean, not very, like it's still among the most profitable coins to mine for a GPU. And it served its purpose, but it's not without its flaws. I don't think it is FPGA proof, especially with development in FPGAs, because the whole assumption of MTP was that memory is expensive and that it's hard to build these things into ASICs at a very high cost. And yes, it does add cost, but now FPGAs have come along with very, very large memory banks as well. And there are ways to integrate memory that's close to the computing core. So I think that assumption is being eroded quite quickly. And as Zcoin rises in market value, I do think it's only a matter of time that the MTP ASIC comes about, even though it might be at a higher cost and lesser efficiency.
Sure. So I did an episode not too long ago where I highlighted a part from Xilinx that is primarily, it's a data center part, but they've already got a data center part that it's designed for cloud infrastructure. However, they do list cryptography and blockchain applications among one of the use cases. And yeah, HBM2, 8 gigs of HBM2 with some of the highest logic cell counts of any of their parts offered, and it retails. I think the corresponding crypto mining part there was a leak of Xilinx's intention to sell it to mining operators or mine operators. I think they're going to debut it at like $1,000 a card.
Yeah, Xilinx are like really going into mining, like FPGA mining. They're openly doing this. Previously they were like this is like them seriously entering the space. So I do think MTP has to change. I do think that GPUs are the lesser evil among all these choices. A lot of people talk about ASICs being ideal. I really don't think that the economics make sense. I mean, yes, it does lead to more stability in the hash rate because they're locked into your coin effectively. But if we're talking about distribution, in general, it's quite poor. Like even Bitcoin, like how many % of the machines were built by Bitmain, and people forget that mine ASIC producers are effectively producing money-making machines. Why would they sell that to you? Unless they've already factored the cost of the opportunity cost of mining it themselves. It only makes sense when they are small and they're like, oh, I need to commit to a certain number of silicon from a certain company, so I don't have all the money to do that, so I need to get orders from other people to get that minimum quantity, and then you set the scale. But once I'm like at Bitmain scale, I don't need to sell to you. Like Bitfury doesn't need to sell to anybody, right? So
sure.
Well,
so a lot of buyers in today's crypto market it's not that they lack savvy as much as they just don't have the experience. They're very young in the industry, and so many ASIC developers that took pre-orders and then never delivered, or only delivered partial batches because, like you said, they were at that startup phase where they weren't established like a Bitmain or a Bitfury, and then not even at that time Bitmain wasn't the Bitmain of today. But yeah, where so many took pre-orders on Bitcoin Talk and wound up delivering maybe 40%, 60% of everything that was ordered because they couldn't operate any longer.
I mean, take a look at just take a look at Zcash, right? They came out with Equihash, which was meant to be ASIC resistant, which was a bit naive. By the way, the guys that designed Equihash also designed MTP. So that's an interesting side note. But the fact that they embrace ASICs, and if you take a look now, try to get a Zcash ASIC. There's only two Zcash miners ASICs that I know of, which is one which is from Bitmain, which you can't get them from them anymore unless you get them secondhand, or you can get them from Inner Silicon, which I think is also sold out. So I'm like, well, how is that decentralized? That means this.
Sure. And on the flip side, you can get, there are a couple other models, like InnoSilicon has the Z9 Mini, but the Z9 Mini it's technologically irrelevant. Unless you have literally free power, you're not going to earn any money. You're
Z9 Mini is Bitmain, if I know. Yes, Z9 Mini is from Bitmain.
Oh my gosh. I don't know why I was thinking of the A9, thinking of the A9 by InnoSilicon, but
maybe you can get that either. Yeah, I don't know if you can.
But at any rate, the point still stands. These ASICs can absolutely outlive their usefulness in a very short period of time.
Yeah. So that's why I feel that, ASICs are basically like, people say like, oh, it's a commodity. And I know it's not set up like to be like a commodity. And people talk about AMD and NVIDIA. I'm like, no, that's really different because AMD and NVIDIA, they can't, mining is a very small portion of them. There's no point for them to keep all these GPUs and stuff for themselves. They need to sell it, right, to make money. Well, with this mining stuff, they don't have to sell it.
Publicly traded companies, they do have shareholders to please, and they're not going to please them by saying that they're mining.
Well, who knows? I mean, like Bitmain wants to do that IPO stuff, right?
Yeah, that's. I mean, is that happening still?
I think there was. I don't know. I think just today I read something that there was some like drama that the IPO might be affected because they sold miners to BitClub network, the huge Ponzi scheme. So I don't know. I mean, that's not proven yet, but
but I mean, if you're a large mining operation, Ponzi scheme or not, you kind of do have to shake hands with Bitmain and InnoSilicon and the rest. So
yeah. I don't know how I feel about that. Like it's like, you want to buy miners, I sell you miners. Like you're not scamming people with my miners. You are misrepresenting something. You are mining, but I don't know. It's a bit tricky.
Is that weird? Did we both just become Bitmain sympathizers? That's messed up.
I don't know. I'm friends with Nishant. We disagree on the whole ASIC thing because he's obviously pro ASIC. I'm like anti ASIC, but I do think that in too much hate and evil, like Bitmain is a business and obviously they're trying to make as much money as possible, but I don't think they're any different than any other business. There's no like evil stuff. Like I think Bitfury might be even more evil.
Okay, fair enough. I don't know a whole lot about how Bitfury does business, but moving on in the questions.
Sorry.
No worries. It's engaging, and I mean, the channel that we're debuting this video on, it was built on mining. So. Mining concerns. So proof of work is very near and dear to the heart of my viewers. But as far as that progression, it sounds like then the Zcoin team is very, to summarize what you told me, is very committed to GPUs if possible.
For the moment, like until like a better alternative exists. Like again, I know this is something that we talked about prior to this recording that I think proof of work as a security model sucks. Like, you know, especially with GPUs, like the cost of attack versus the cost of damage that you can cause is not a good trade-off, especially if you're using commodity hardware, because I don't have any allegiance to your coin. I can attack you and my GPU is still worth something. While with an ASIC, I can attack you and now my brick is now brick, right? So I do think that, yeah, you know, I do think proof of work should be seen as a distribution mechanism, as a way to build community, as a way to distribute your coin in a fair way that people devote resources and get coins, and I don't have to do an ICO and like pre-allocate it to all my buddies or people who give me money. I think that's a big thing about, especially if you're a privacy coin, especially when privacy is often the most valued in countries where you know, it can be the most like oppressive and you know, they may be cut off from exchanges and stuff like that. So I do feel that proof of work is important there, but not so much for security. And that's why I feel that chain locks or other sorts of hybrid mechanisms like what Decred does are good, where you have a proof of stake and proof of work model kind of like supplementing each other.
Got it. Very cool. Well, it sounds like then it's that's kind of that hybrid model is already in place with Zcoin, but still largely in favor of proof of work for the foreseeable future then. So I'm curious, what would cause the Zcoin team to fork their proof of work algorithm? How big a threat would have to come up to say, this is imminent, we're doing it now?
If we are seeing, like, I think this has happened before in Zcoin's past, where when we went that CPU route, CPU only route, and we knew for a fact that there were a couple of guys that were having a really unfair advantage over others because they were using botnets, because that doesn't really cost them anything, or discounted credits, and that put them at a huge advantage over everyone else, so that no one else was mining. It was just this dumb group of people. And I remember they were calculating the cost, and they were like making like twice the amount that they put in. So no matter what their belief in the coin, it makes sense for them to just dump it immediately, right? I mean, and I don't think that really affects. I don't think that really improves distribution. It actually is really unhealthy for the coin. And I do think that if we come to a similar type scenario, I do think we would consider an emergency hard fork to change the algorithm there. We are looking at stuff like PropPow. You know, I know it's very controversial, but there's been like audits on it. People with hardware, you know, experience looking at it, and we haven't made a decision there. I think it's still up for discussion, but the community seems to be favorable. One of the big issues of MTP is that its proof sizes are really big. So even if the block is empty, it means that it's 200 kilobytes that needs to be stored, and that also means as pools have to have very high bandwidth, because with every share you also need that 200 kilobyte proof. So it's a bit of a centralization issue there. So, you know, we feel that MTP has served its purpose, and maybe it's time to move to newer algorithms. We're not a favor of RandomX just because of its CPU focus. And we don't really know of any other, I mean, like, you know, this X16 thing, I mean, that's just repeating the same mistakes that we found out with Dash, and then, you know, this X11, X15, X22, you know, like all this thing is just like, gosh, guys, learn something from this. You need a different approach to this stuff, right? And
sure.
And I do think that stuff like RandomX and PropPow are interesting developments into more advanced algorithms. It always will be a cat and mouse game, but especially during the early periods of the coin, especially during the high inflation periods, you need to try to stave off that type of ASIC dominance or FPGA dominance.
Sure, that's great. Well, and it's great to hear you being so progressive so proactive about dealing with the proof of work algorithm before it becomes a massive problem. As far as RandomX, and this is just me offering a layperson's opinion, have you already looked at RandomX and just adjusting scratchpad values to perhaps tune a little bit more towards GPU?
Yeah, I mean, like the thing is that there have been some experts that doubt like how RandomX, how how good RandomX actually is. And yes, you can tweak parameters and stuff like that, but you have to realize that RandomX was actually designed, for like CPU in mind. And if we were targeting GPUs, I mean, prop power was, intending to target to make the GPU the ASIC, right? I of course rely on experts to do this, and of course a lot of hardware people or like software people there, and there's a lot of controversy around that. Obviously, it's a big decision, and I would want to consult other coins that have used PropPal to see what's their experience. But for example, I believe Loki actually implemented RandomX, and
they did so after evaluating PropPal for over a year.
Yeah, and they were so pissed off at RandomX because they were so dominated by botnets that they're like, screw proof of work, we're going proof of stake.
Wow, this is okay. So I'm talking to Simon in a day and a half now. I hadn't read this news yet. Mind is blown
sure. I remember, I might be remembering, but I remember they were telling me that they really hated RandomX. And they were going through proof of stake.
Well, they kind of had some growing pains there. That they also went with Kryptonite Turtle, and they did merge mining with the Turtle coin and a couple others as well. Apparently, there are some miners in the community that were able to do triple merged mining.
Wow.
Yeah.
I mean, there's also some approach. I think there's some coin called Epic Cash that is interesting. I don't think it'll work. I think it'll just make it unattractive for everybody, but I do think it was an interesting approach, which was to have your algorithm, a combination of different algorithms, like certain blocks are mined with PropPal, certain blocks are mined with RandomX, and some blocks are mined by like a ASIC friendly algorithm. I was like, okay, it's like interesting. I don't know how I feel about that, but I do feel that when you kind of try to please everybody, end up pleasing nobody. So
yeah, that's for sure. It seems like also that's the orchestration of the consensus there would be a bit of a headache too. You could have, there's so many more moving parts. It's easy to break.
Yeah, but I mean, I do think that the ideas behind it is that, well, then because like CPU mining community, FPGA and ASIC and GPU, they're quite different. I mean, similar but different. So that means that I guess like there are more people to have to compromise and stuff like that. But I don't know. I mean, I just feel that it's a bit messy, and I rather try to target one hardware class, unless there's a clear reason to do it for many. Yeah.
Sure. Well, your approach sounds reasonable, and it sounds like whatever decision your team comes up with, you will at least put some real thought into it, real discussion too. So great. As far as a bit of an avatar of who that person is that you want contributing hash rate, what does that person look like, or what does that entity look like that's trying to mine for Zcoin?
I think it would be really cool, especially like a home miner would be like, of course, ideal. Like people who are like interested to get into cryptocurrencies, and they're like, I don't necessarily want to put like so much money into it, but I just want to like see what I can do and learn about it just from mining it, and that would be really cool. Or like people who, like, I actually recently talked to some guys from Venezuela, and I was like, how are you guys making money? Like, you can't be making that much money. And they're like, yeah, we are making that much money, but for us, 200 USD a month is enough to feed my family. And I was like, fair enough. And if those type of miners are the ones where that would be the best use case, because they're actually making a living of it, they're getting distribution of a coin that really changes their quality of life and makes crypto real. Like, it's actually helping them live.
Sure. Well, and couched in a privacy project as well, in an area like Venezuela, there'd be serious repercussions if some sort of chain analysis showed countenance their transactions and their government found them out.
Yeah, so one really cool things about let's say that FPGAs and ASICs, you can easily stop them. You say like, I'm not importing ASICs, I'm not allowing the import of FPGAs, all that's illegal. But it's a lot harder to say stop the import of graphics card or computers. And that's a really, really big thing. Like Vietnam, Venezuela, they effectively stopped it, like the import of this type of items. But you can't stop GPUs being imported easily unless everyone's just playing solitaire. Yeah, you know.
Yeah. Oh man, that's cool. So I think that really does align very well with the original Satoshi white paper.
I do think that people have to stop talking about what Satoshi intended. I mean,
well, we're way past that, of course, and the state of the art is so far beyond what he outlined, and then what he was able to personally interact with through early 2011, mid 2011, or whatever, going silent. However, without getting, metaphysical or weird, he really did predict a heck of a lot in terms of the avatar, right? Like the person that it would appeal to. So,
yeah, definitely. I don't know if he saw it as a pure SOV. I mean, a lot of people hate Bitcoin Cash, but they have a point. They actually said peer-to-peer electronic cash.
Yeah,
and I do feel that it's a pity that we're just going down. Like, I feel what the crypto scene right now and where Bitcoin is a very, very sad state. Like, extremely sad state, because where is the volume now? It's on derivatives, right? It's gambling, basically, right? And people are talking about SOV, and then like less about utility. It's more about this is something to make money on. This is something, and we're like, wow, yeah. I mean, this I guess is predictable, but it's really sad. It has abandoned all the cyberpunk values. It's just become almost like the institutions that it was trying to replace. Like,
sure. Well, and to your point, Reuben, also the derivatives, the futures, the options, all this stuff. This is the injection site at which the Fed and other centralized banks can kill us. They can inject. They can poison us.
Yes, exactly. And that's why people are talking about the whole, like they were so excited when they call like BAT and all this other. Exchange ETFs, remember the Bitcoin ETF, and I feel that that's actually a dangerous thing, and especially when a lot of this derivatives, they don't actually need Bitcoin. Like, it's just a contract, right? And it's just totally ridiculous. It's like, this is something what we've been trying to fight on, and now we're like dealing with like centralized entities like BitMEX with less transparency as a bank. Effectively, they can screw you over if they want to. And is this really? And now we're talking about custodial solutions and all this other stuff. Like, so we are becoming more like the financial institution that we're supposed to displace, right?
Yeah. No, I agree. It is definitely sad. Let's move on to privacy a little bit. Maybe there's some light at the end of the tunnel here in this conversation. But what percentage of the transactions, and I think I asked you kind of informally before, the percentage of transactions on the Zcoin network that are currently private, or how much user behavior indicates that there's a high percentage, or what does that look like right now, user behavior?
It's pretty low. I mean, I think there's almost like over 200, over 1,000 coins that have gone through our Sigma process, which is a very low percentage given that we have a circulating supply of 9 million. But we have a space on our Explorer. Like, I guess you can add the link at the bottom where you can see that with zero knowledge proof schemes, the anonymity just generally grows, and you can see that you generally get a few thousand anonymity set even with any of the denominations, rather than like those type of mixing solutions. We are making steps to increase this in the sense that, like, for example, our new GUI does prompt you to anonymize your coins, and it's quite annoying about it. Like, anonymize your coins. So hopefully that will, once we switch more to that and more people use that client, we will see much larger numbers. And I don't think we need 100% to get like really good anonymity, because just imagine if like 20%, that's like a couple of million, And
I want to say that's 18%. Is that 18 or is 17, 18% higher than Zcoin or Zcash rather?
No. So I think currently like Zcash, I think the anonymity is at something like 30,000. Like everything that has entered their this thing. I think we are like more like in the 4,000, 5,000. But
got it. I've read somewhere that there was only a few percent of.
Yeah, it was a very few percent. But I would think that with lelantus, where we are planning it to make it privacy on by default, but the ability to opt out, that means all our default wallets, if you install our wallet, you get it by on default. The mobile implementation that we're pushing with Edge will be default on. So I do think that once that happens, the percentage of private transactions will greatly increase. And I think the only people who wouldn't implement it are exchanges, which to me, people say like, oh yeah, that's not good. But actually, it's not that bad. Actually, maybe it's good that we know how much exchanges are holding. And the thing is that the fact that even if they don't support like, a new addressing structure, you can always do a Sigma span or a lelantus span to the address. And all you can tell is that this money appeared there. You can't tell the source of those funds. From an outside point of view, and that's already pretty good privacy. And you can't really expect privacy from an exchange that knows your identity anyway. So they know your thing, but it's just more like, oh yeah, money appearing here, money appearing here. I do think it's a good in between, and we have to be realistic. Like, I know, like, I am a big fan of privacy on by default, but I'm also realistic of like the growing pains we have with regulators, and we also don't want to be delisted of all the exchanges. By having that transparent function and still having the ability to spend anonymously to those addresses, I do feel that that's a nice in between. And the fact that exchanges can do massive sends out without having to do this computationally intensive Sigma or lelantus spans, that makes a lot of sense from an exchange point of view. But for a regular regular guy, those computations are not going to be that heavy. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. Very cool. And we already talked about the privacy mechanism and that it's changing, that it has changed recently from Zcoin now to Sigma and then to lelantus. The timeline for that change, is there any kind of I don't know, with development in general, asking about timelines is usually an exercise in frustration.
So, I mean, we used Zcoin from 2016, and then we used something like almost like Zcoin 1 point something. Like, we actually improved upon it and hardened it. And I think we used it until like April last year, April 2019. And then we switched to Sigma in June or July 2019. So we've been using it for a couple of months. We do think lelantus is going to be live by Q3 of this year. So
wow, okay.
We try to be faster, but we'll see. I think better to under promise and over deliver.
For sure. That's great. So to do peer review, I think I asked this before, peer review of Sigma or lelantus. Has there been any notable either institution of higher education or any other third party that has said, hey, this looks interesting, we're going to review this for you, or have you paid for an audit?
So the thing is that a lot of time the audits aren't actually cryptographic audits. Most of them like code review audits, and I think the main thing is also the quality of the paper itself. Like the Zcoin paper wasn't of the best quality. It wasn't really a full description of the protocol, and it lacked certain security proofs, which on retrospect should have raised alarm bells. But we were a bit naive when we first began. So lelantus is much more fully described. It has all security proofs. One of many proofs is also very fully described, all the security proofs. And on top of that, like I believe if I'm not mistaken, JP Morgan has been also looking at a variant of one of many proofs. Yeah, I forgot to mention this. It's called M out of N proofs. And there are several other Ethereum projects that are also looking at the one out of many proof scheme. So I do think there's a lot of eyes on it, especially when we showed that you can scale this one out of many proof scheme to decent anonymity sets, then that kind of renewed interest. And I would like to think that Zcoin kind of did that, especially with lelantus, because everyone was super surprised. They're like, what? You're getting this level of anonymity with this scheme? That's pretty impressive. Like, they never thought it was possible. And so Monero Research Labs did include lelantus as one of its possible scaling solutions. And actually we collaborated with Sarang to improve lelantus to allow direct anonymous transfer. So you'll find his name on the second paper of lelantus. And I think, so Zcash, Ariel Gabizon, he's no longer a Zcash, but he was the guy that found the Zcash inflation bug. And he actually, when he saw lelantus, he was like, wow, if I could design a privacy coin from scratch, I probably would have opted for a scheme like lelantus as well. So that's a pretty good, huge endorsement. And Beam's also been, I think they've already announced that they will be introducing lelantus into their Mimblewimble model. That's also pretty amazing. So there's a lot of eyes on it, and of course, none of it's perfect. And code audits aren't cheap, cryptographic. And it looked like, Zcash went through like so many audits and they still didn't find the issues. So of course, we would like to fund audits, but we are very mindful because especially with our limited budget. I also think that we are submitting the paper to more like security cryptographic conferences, and hopefully we get more eyes there. But I'm quite confident that we are generally cryptographically secure because of the simplicity of the protocol. Yeah.
Got it. Very cool. And the endorsements that you mentioned before of if they had to do it over again, and then other coin projects taking a look at it, that speaks quite a bit as well.
Yeah, I mean, like if JP Morgan's looking at it, I think that's like, and especially like big giants like Monero and Zcash, they've looked at it, and so that's cool. Yeah.
Very cool. So I'm curious here, trusted setup. When it was when Zcoin first launched, did it require trusted setup? Moving to Sigma and then moving to lelantus, any potential future forks of the code base or current modern day forks of the code base? At what points have you required trusted setup, or have you never required trusted setup?
Both Sigma and lelantus don't require trusted setup. We only require trusted setup for Zcoin. And the way that we implemented the trusted setup was quite clever. And even Peter Todd actually said that it was very clever. That was quite cool. So the thing is that we have a trusted setup, but we didn't do the trusted setup. It was taken from a academic challenge in 1991 called the Rsa Factoring Challenge. And back then Rsa was like before they got compromised by the NSA, they were quite like, pro encryption. They fought against the Clipper chip and all this type of stuff. And basically they held this challenge to try and test how strong RSA encryption was. So, there was no one could have foreseen that someone would use this for the basis of a privacy cryptocurrency, right? And therefore the incentives to backdoor that are pretty low, because if they backdoor it, then it kind of defeats the point of their research. So I do think that, I do feel that there was definitely the pick of the RSA Factoring Challenge was definitely much more preferable than the initial Sprouts Zcash ceremony, which was like a bunch of guys, mostly Zcash people, and it was, I think, 6 participants or something like that, like really low number, and there was like multiple flaws with it, and yeah, so I do feel that the trusted setup wasn't that big of an issue, but it was something that we felt that it was better not to have it at all. And therefore, even since 2017, we actually announced that we were looking at one of many proofs, which is the basis of Sigma. And unfortunately, it took us so long to deploy it. But yeah, we've acquired a lot of capabilities and learning experience through that. So I guess it's like a baptism of fire. So yeah.
Okay, cool. As far as the anonymity set size and how it compares to other privacy coins, I know there's a really handy graphic that you have in the blog post comparing different types of privacy protocols. What is the current anonymity set size, and how will that change with lelantus?
So Sigma is currently I think at 16,384. That's what we set it at. We could easily bring it up a bit higher, but I think at that time we were a bit concerned on performance. We haven't started doing all this performance tricks like batching and then all this other optimizations to bring down that verification time. So we just decided to keep it at 16,000 for that time. But with lelantus, we're trying to bring it up to 100,000. We're quite confident we can get there. And we have batching techniques. And I think that favors on the transaction basis quite favorably compared to stuff like Monero, which is currently 11 per transaction or so. Of course, it gets more complicated when you see it as a whole payment system. So I think it's just easier to look at it on a per transaction basis. So I guess it's lesser than Zcash, but greater than Monero and better than any coin join, I suppose. Yeah.
Got it. And can I ask what is the functional anonymity set when you factor in the percentage of users or the percentage of transactions that leverage privacy? Does that decrease the anonymity set size?
Definitely. I would say currently, if you use the one denomination, you have an anonymity set size of 4,000. I guess on the lesser end of the scale, if you're using the 0.05 denomination, you would have an anonymity set of 500, which isn't bad but not great either.
Sure, but still 50 times greater than Monero.
Yeah, but we feel that because with lelantus, because here we kind of have had separate baskets for each denomination, right? Which is kind of a shame, right? Because it's this denomination has this set and this set, this set, this set. And if you make too few denominations, it becomes very inefficient, because then to make a 199, you have to have so many different proofs. So that's kind of the beauty of lelantus, because the lelantus allows you to blind those amounts so that I can have a single proof that represents 136.53 rather than 100 and then 25 and 10 and 5111. I don't have to have so many proofs for each denomination. I just have one proof for whatever amount and arbitrary amount. So that lelantus actually has a huge, it's almost like a global anonymity set, because I don't have to pick denominations anymore. So I think that is a huge privacy increase. Not to mention that because of using a fixed denominations, you can take a look at the patterns of denominations that you're burning and spending and make certain inferences from that. lelantus also removes that vector as well. Yeah.
Very, very cool. So using that same metric of sort of global anonymity and not just per transaction anonymity, does that change the anonymity set for Monero? And pardon me asking in such plain terms, but as a layperson, I don't really study this.
I think it's really difficult to because anonymity set is only one thing, right? I mean, the theoretical anonymity set for Monero, because every transaction adds more plausible deniability, does add much more anonymity. But the fact is that there are certain ways that you can de-anonymize yourself. For example, if I make repeated transactions to a merchant or exchange that knows my identity, they can find common taint trails, that arise from a single source that kind of really sort of removes all the decoys in a certain way, because the chances of all this coming from a single source is quite low. And that's an ongoing problem with these decoy sets, decoy schemes. And that's why Monero is looking at maybe we should scale our ring sizes to 1,000 or so to see how that addresses this type of issue. So it is an issue that they acknowledge. They see the issue, and they see why they have to increase the ring sizes for that. But I do feel the zero knowledge proof way and the way of direct anonymous transfers within the lelantus is a superior model to that. But who knows? I mean, of course, I'm biased.
Sure. Well, I mean, beyond that, though, the differences in approach and idea and methodology, right, for achieving privacy. a lot of people think that we're still in it, cryptocurrency is still in its infancy. And if that's true, then we need diversity.
We should be exploring. Yeah. And I do. And the cool thing about Lelantus was that Monero was looking at Lelantus as a way to scale their ring sizes while we were using it in like a burn and redeem fashion. So it shows how flexible this technology actually is. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, very cool. Let me ask, as far as chain analysis, there have been some claims with various different coins that chain analysis works and that it can de-anonymize certain networks. Has there ever been a claim on Zcoin?
No, I don't think so. Just for the simple fact, I don't think we're big enough for anyone who has tried. I do think that it's a lot more difficult, but I do think that because of the use of fixed denominations, you can make certain inferences from that pattern of burning and spending. But as I said, Sigma is only like a transitional privacy protocol, and Lelantus is like Sigma is a building block of Lelantus, so it's not like we're throwing it all out, right? It's like layering stuff on top. I do feel that I would only be satisfied like saying that, yeah, my privacy is good once Lelantus is deployed. I do think Sigma's privacy is like better than any coin mixer or a lot of stuff out there, but at the current state of things, I do think that Lelantus is where we need to be. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. So it sounds like then, as far as there being any kind of a claim that chain analysis would work on Zcoin, are you saying it's kind of more security through obscurity? There isn't scrutiny yet, or is it?
We know the attack vectors, right? We know about the pattern recognition, and we've mentioned this, and we've even the privacy comparison, we actually talk about this, like the patterns of burning and spending. We have been really open about this, and we never said that Sigma is the end or be all. We always say that the Lelantus is what we're trying to aim at, and I think that's it provides good privacy now, but I am definitely against casual chain analysis or even like slightly more advanced. But I do think like a very determined guy can de-anonymize it with enough effort. But I do feel that once the Lelantus, especially with direct anonymous payments, that becomes a lot more harder. And now what's really interesting, I've been hearing from certain circles that Monero has been de-anonymized, not so on the blockchain layer, but more on the network layer. Because, like, you know, I don't think most Monero guys use Tor when they do their Monero transactions. And that's something that's interesting. Like Zcash, I don't think most people use Tor to do their Zcash transactions. And you can have all this blockchain privacy, great mechanisms, but if you're not protecting your IP address, you know, we all talk about privacy on by default, right? But you guys are like not you guys, but more like these currencies are having it transparent with the IP address. Can you imagine, like, you have a transaction tied to your IP address that's just game over?
Sure. It's kind of like the Fourth Amendment versus being able to purchase cellular tower records. Yeah.
So I do think we do have Dandelion plus by default. So that means, you know, there's always that level of obfuscation of the IP address, and we have Tor built into our wallet that you can just turn on with a click of a button, and I think that's a really good user experience. You want added anonymity, turn on Tor, but even if you don't, you have Dandelion protection. So I think that's pretty good. Yeah.
Very, very cool. Okay, so let's ask about so both the data and the cost of privacy on Zcoin, both in terms of data and time by way of proof, and then by way of verification, and then just total user experience.
Yep. So the proof sizes are really competitive. It's like 1.5 kilobytes, similar to I guess a Monero with their bulletproof implementation. So I think it's not a big issue. Of course, like, you know, it's still bigger than a Bitcoin transaction, but I think it's good enough. Proving times like 1-2 seconds or so, so it's still relatively quick. We actually have some tricks that we haven't implemented that can bring that proving time down even further through a pre-computation. Like if you keep your wallet on, you can do it even quicker. So we actually have an unreleased paper called Hierarchical one out of many proofs, which actually allows you to bring down proving times to less than 1 second, and some improvements on verification time as well. We don't plan to roll that out with the first version of lelantus just because we think we need to roll something out first and then incrementally improve it. But it's to show that we are actively thinking about these issues and already have like results from it. Yeah.
I'm curious about something, and this is we hadn't talked about this before, and I don't think I prepared you at all with this this question, but I've heard criticisms of Zcash in terms of if everybody who was using Zcash, and Zcash being sort of one of the larger privacy coin projects, if everybody was using it, Z transactions only. If everybody's decided we all want to be private now, and 100% of transactions were Z transactions only, that it would cause some serious network congestion, and that it would make it difficult to deal with block sizes.
No, I don't think so. Block sizes are a Zcash proof is only 288 bytes. It's not a problem. Okay. I don't think it's the only possible thing, which is verification time, which is also really quick. It's like a very, very low milliseconds. Look, there's R. I mean, okay, R is like, relatively low cap. Have you heard of R? It's like pirate chain.
Yes, actually, I'm going to be talking with them this Friday.
Yeah. So they basically are full Z to Z transaction, and I think it's good that they show that it's possible. And it's quite fun. Like, it's a fun project. I'm not so sure where would they stand if Zcash starts going to privacy on by default. But I do think it's good that it exists to put pressure that, hey, look, it's possible to do it. But it'd be interesting. You should ask them, like, hey, look, if Zcash does go fully shielded, what would your benefits be? I think that's a really good question.
Yeah. No, definitely. I think I definitely would go there with them. And then there's some other projects that are much smaller and trying to gain some attention that are essentially doing the same thing. But where I was going with that question was to ask then with Zcoin, what would be the impact of every user going fully private all the time? And would there be a need at any point in the future for like chain pruning or for any other measures to help with speed and throughput?
I mean, there are a few things, right? Verification time is probably the most important thing, because it means that how many transactions can a computer process to actually just do that, right? And that seems to be the main bottleneck. Bandwidth, a bits of it, but 1.5 kilobytes, and with current internet connections, it isn't really a big issue. Storage to me is a bit overrated. Storage sizes are always growing, and I don't know. I don't. Among all the other things, I think like storage is the least important, and if you sacrifice other stuff, like Mimblewimble is like more efficient in storage, but it has crap privacy. So sure. What's the trade-off there? And
I tend to agree with you on the storage front as well. You take your large institutions, financial institutions now, they've got massive data centers to secure transactions on petabytes of hard disk space, and that's never going away in the future. So
we're thinking of tricks of like to do pruning, or to like for example, when the accumulator set is full, to just do some sort of pre-computation, and people can just reference it rather than having to recompute that whole thing again. So that's something that's possible. So there are ways to do it. Of course, they always come with some sort of trade-offs, but you can always sync it from scratch if you want. I think that's important to have that option to do that. And one of the benefits of having a masternode network is that because we're paying people to run these nodes, and we have 5,000 of them, which is among the highest among the entire cryptocurrency community, it means that if we pay people to do this, we can expect them to upgrade their hardware to not be running it on the Raspberry Pi, right? And stuff like multi-core, if you have a multi-core processor, that means that, you can parallelize the computation, and that means like if I have a dual core, I can have almost 2 times the throughput, or quad core and 4 times the throughput. We're not expecting people to maintain some
AMD EPYC, multi-core.
Obviously, any sort of multi-core does have and having an incentivized node network does help with that. So I do think that obviously it comes at some cost, but I do think that, especially for modern computers, it's not going to be an issue.
Got it. Okay. Awesome. I needed to ask that, and I wanted to ask from a couple different projects about the cost of privacy, like in terms of cryptocurrency, what we normally worry about.
The cost of privacy is scalability, but I think the biggest one is actually auditability of supply. I think that's one of the biggest ones. Like, how do I know that my coin's not being inflated to smithereens? And Zcash kind of gets around that by doing regular turnstiles, which means that they force everyone to come out of the shielded layer to the transparent layer every time they do a hard fork, and then go back in to kind of audit the supply. But that's more of like an audit to say, okay, nothing crazy has gone. But what happened if something has gone on? Then what happens? You either inflate the supply or you forfeit someone's coins. Both are not great, right? And yeah, and it depends on the amount of inflation. Like for us, it's like low enough. Like, you know, like with the recent hack, it was like less than 1% of the circulating supply. We're like, okay, yeah, just add it to the supply. But if it's like 500%, what are you gonna do? You know,
right.
It's hard questions. I don't think that anyone has a great solution to this. I mean, like, yes, Sigma and Zcoin does have some sort of supply auditability, because when you burn 10, you have to redeem 10. You can kind of monitor that. But it comes at a big cost of privacy. So I don't think you can actually have both. But I think it's the only way to kind of balance that out is to have a system that is not too many moving parts, easy to understand, so that the flaws are a lot easier to find. Yeah.
I think you already answered the question regarding origin and destination wallet addresses, and then transaction amounts being visible.
Yeah. So I mean, with currently, so we have implemented BIP 47, which we call RAP, or Receiver Address Privacy, which is just a rename of payment codes, because payment codes is a horrible name. It just doesn't sound sexy at all.
Yeah, that's true. RAP does sound pretty sexy.
Yeah, it's like rap. Yeah, can make a rap video. But so yeah, so we have that on a PR. That's waiting to be merged. And the great thing is that because I think we're the first C++ implementation of it, that means any other Bitcoin core or can easily implement it as well. So I think that's really cool. And the great thing about this type of stealth addresses versus the traditional stealth addresses used in Bitcoin is that you don't have to have an entire set of the blockchain, so light wallets can use it. And payments made to it are indistinguishable from any other payment. So you don't know that you're paying to, I mean, like, people can't see that this is a stealth address payment. So I think that's really important. So we do have that sort of privacy that set to be merged. But if you're talking about pure lelantus, we like, if I go in, you know, that whole right to give, the right of redemption, I can give it to you. So yeah, we hide amounts, we hide source. The receiver, we haven't been able to hide it just yet, but it's something that we're working on. But even as it isn't, we don't think that it leaks that much information, because all you can tell is that this address received this number of transactions, but you don't know how much, you don't know where it's from, and you also don't know when he spends it. Like yeah, he received 100 transactions. How much it worth? Don't know.
It'll be dust, yeah.
Where did it come from? Don't know. It could be dust.
Yeah.
And when someone spends, you don't even know it's from this address. So we don't know how much that actually leaks out. We probably have to do more analysis on that, but we think that for the moment it's good enough. But it is an active problem that we're still trying to look into. But we think that's still very high privacy in any case.
So other privacy functions aside from transactions, we talked about this, I think, off camera, that there are several other privacy-oriented projects, and they call themselves networks, actually, not just coins, that have other related products, even some wallets that are primarily built up around forks of Whisper's Signal app. Is there anything else outside of transactions that Zcoin is targeting for development?
So I guess the idea is that, you know, we have this a layer called Exodus, which is basically an omnipod, and, you know, which USDT was originally built on Bitcoin. And I believe that the reason why people move from Omni to Ethereum's ERC20 token is not so much that Omni sucks, but it's more because Bitcoin's block time is slow and the transaction fees are high. So if I can do that on Ethereum cheaper and with a faster confirmation time, you know, people would rather use that. And I think that's what made the move to like ERC20 USDT as the standard. But what we do with this Omnipod is that we have all that Sigma functionality as well. And what that means is you can build your own privacy USDT. You can do your own private stable coins, or you can even hold like little pollings or votes where, let's say, I want to have a little vote, but I want people to vote anonymously but verifiably. And I can issue all these coins, they burn their coins, and then they start spending their coins into little boxes, say, I want this person, or yes, no. And that's another use case of this thing. So we're not intending to be like a full smart contract platform, but if other people want to use our privacy network to build their own tokens, and that's something that Paramin has been in talks with multiple businesses who are quite interested in doing things like this. That's a use case for Zcoin as well. But for the moment, we're not thinking about full smart contract capability. We don't want to. We did consider like a QTIM like port and things like that. We're like, man, I think we have to focus on what we do well, which is privacy.
Sure, that's amazing. So I spoke to Sean Black from the Ravencoin project not long ago, and they're changing a little bit about their asset issuance. And when I asked them about privacy, they're not so much focused on privacy at all with asset issuance, and that is their main feature, is issuing assets. But they are creating something that could potentially put them in compliance with certain securities laws in terms of issuing to accredited investors. However, it seems like with what you're proposing here with Exodus, or what Portman's been proposing and spitballing about with Exodus.
It's actually live, by the way. Exodus with Sigma can be used on Zcoin today.
What?
But we haven't announced it, actually.
Oh my gosh! Is this breaking? Do I get to break this news?
Yeah, I mean, we have reasons why we haven't announced it, because we're building the tools to make it easier to issue. It's something we call ZTM, which is basically an API so that people can easily issue and manage their tokens. And we feel that we rather launch that together with that rather than have like a half-baked product.
That's super exciting. Can we circle back and can I interview you again when this goes live?
Yeah, sure, definitely. And we can even like create one and play around with it. Yeah.
That would be awesome. It'll be a far less lengthy interview. We'll get that in business. That's awesome. That's super exciting. So for me, like the idea of having properly like private assets, and I asked the Ravencoin team about this. Privacy really isn't on the roadmap. However, working with some of these securities regulations to issue to accredited investors and whitelisting certain addresses, that's kind of more what they're interested in. So what you're working on, while only tangentially related, to me is very interesting because it's very unique.
And like, you know, I mean, there's a lot of talk about Aztec protocol on Ethereum and you know, there are all this privacy thing, but it's kind of like in silos. I have to be inside that contract. I have to go in, or like, you know, tornado cash and things like that. It's like little silos of pockets. It's like not really at the protocol level. And I think Aztec at the moment currently only hides values, which, you know, it's minimal. Like, you know, I think Ethereum is going to have a really hard time with privacy. The whole account-based model is not really conducive for privacy.
Yeah, well, it's like decentralization itself. You can build centralized systems on top of decentralized systems, but you can't go the other way around. And I think the same is probably true of privacy.
Yeah, it's very hard to tack on privacy, and that's why I kind of feel that, you know, like I don't know. I mean, it's a bit controversial. I mean, people always say like blockchain not crypto, blockchain not Bitcoin. I'm like, no, you know, cryptocurrencies are the best applications of blockchain. There isn't like, you know, I mean, like, you know, I like what Ravencoin is doing, but I mean, this is my own personal opinion. I don't really see enterprise use cases of blockchain. A lot of these things can be solved. Like you can't really have cryptocurrencies without blockchain. you need blockchain technology. But with things like supply chain management or like, you know, all this medical record stuff, like, do you really want a blockchain for that? Like, even like all this like tokenization of securities. And, you know, I think one of the beauties of tokenization was that you didn't have to deal with all this regulation and deal with this. But now once you start dealing with all this regulation and like, how much more efficient it is, do we actually have a problem right now? You know, because we are introducing all this regulation and whatnot.
Sure. Well, I agree with you. In a perfect world, I agree with you. But their pedigree and their start of their entire project was with a guy who just recently got his Series 7 license and is actively campaigning to, while the SEC is in the comment period for revisiting the qualifications for accredited investment, is they're trying to go and slash and burn some of that stuff and say, hey, SEC, get out of here. Like, let us just issue stuff. So I think that they're focusing on that the best way that they know how.
No. I think I mean, honestly, I would definitely say, like, go ahead and do an experiment. I mean, this is just my own personal view that I feel that, you know, like, you know, I do think that currency, like decentralized currency, is a bit utopian in the sense that, you know, I feel that cryptocurrencies are really essential to keep financial institutions and government is a check and balance. I'm not anti-government. I mean, people think that I'm not anti-government. I just think that they need to be kept in control, as in they need to be kept, like, you know, there's some check and balance. Because right now, like, you know, what happens if we're moving towards a cashless society, and that's actually really horrible or like we're talking about CBDCs, so central bank digital currencies, where the central bank has full knowledge of the movement of all the money. Yeah. People think that's great to fight money laundering, but what do you actually mean? What that actually means is that if a tyrannical government comes into play, you will never be able to replace them. Because if I want to mount a political opposition, I can't raise my money because, you know, then they forfeit it and cut me off. How can I fight against that when all my money is controlled by a central entity and has full knowledge? With cash, at least they can't control everything, right? And I do feel that digital currencies offer that well, if you're going to screw me over, I'm going to switch to Bitcoin or like, you know, cryptocurrencies or like, you know, privacy cryptocurrencies. And I feel like that's a really real use case.
Yeah, no, totally agreed. Totally agreed. It's, as an idea, it's absolutely viral, and it appeals to anybody who ever has had to use currency in the real world. That's awesome. And you're not going to believe me. Tron Black over at Ravencoin, he said something very, very similar. Yeah,
is Tron Black anything got to do with Tron? No,
no. It's just it's a very unfortunate name. I mean, and based on his age, he was named Tron before the original Disney movie came out. Before.
Oh wow!
So his
like Megatron.
Yeah, right. It's a family name, you know. Great Grandpa Tron, way back.
What, really? That's his real name? Is Tron?
That's his real name. His parents named him Tron.
Wow, Tron Black.
Yeah, yeah.
Kudos to him.
When you look up his interview, he's a very mild-mannered person. If you looked at him, you'd think,
I was very confused. I remember seeing the interview. I was like, why are you interviewing Tron together with Ravencoin? And I'm like, a bit confused. I was like, what's Tron Black? Is that like some Tron fork?
Yeah, right. It's a premium Tron fork. It's the private version of Tron. It's like Uber Black.
Like Dogecoin Dark. That's not much.
But no, it's funny. I think there are a lot of people on different sides of the cryptocurrency industry, whether or not they're involved actively in developing privacy coins, who in their hearts, they want to see the individual sovereignty through cryptocurrency, and see that governments, while they're necessary, have them be kept in check and have them be kept as servants of the people, and not, you know, not allow for financial policy to enslave people.
We aren't seeing this now because of like big data and the way of manipulation of social media. We are no longer, the government is no longer servants of the people. It's more of like they manipulate the people to get what they want, and all this fake news and then all this sort of stuff. It's really unfortunate. And I do think that it's really a dangerous path to see. Like, I mean, you are seeing the real impacts of this throughout the world right now. It's dangerous, and I do feel that we need to retake our privacy and not just surrender it just because it may be used for crime. Because, well, yeah. Well, one of the things that really pisses me off is that all these banks are and like saying, or central banks are saying like, oh yeah, cryptocurrencies can be used for illegal activities. And you take a look at the actual statistics that no, actually cryptocurrencies are very low amount of usage for crime. And I'm like, okay, well, what about your money, your fiat money, HSBC, Sinaloa drug cartel, or like, the whole subprime mortgage crisis? And what do you do with them? Nothing. You just give them a little fine, and very few people went to jail. And you say that you're too big to fail. Like,
all right. Now the cartels in every major country, the cartels, they love the US dollar.
Yeah, they love banks. They love, and I mean, like, HSBC was intentionally, they designed like the windows to fit the cash bags. Like, it was custom designed for that. And so how do you say you don't know about this, right? This was like, I'm making it easy for you to launder your money, and like nothing happened to them, right?
Yeah, no, it definitely is. Well, again, not Satoshi was no prophet. Satoshi didn't get everything perfect, but that's what Satoshi was talking about.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's why I feel it's really sad, the state of the crypto industry right now.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a few more questions regarding privacy, and then yeah, you've been so generous with your time. I really appreciate it. But but thank you again. This has been a pleasure.
No,
also talking about this.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
As far as support for wallets and mobile wallets in particular, we talked about this off camera, that there are a large percentage of the world's population, especially in South Asia specifically, where mobile first is their only experience of the digital world.
Definitely, yeah.
So is there support right now for privacy features on Zcoin on mobile?
It's coming really soon. We're working with Edge Wallet, with Paul Pui, and we're doing like a privacy on by default wallet. So that's quite cool. And we see that as the beginning of more mobile wallets. We see like Edge Wallet, like, okay, let's integrate it with them, and we don't have to do a lot of the front end work and the stuff that they already did. We're just going to do like all the back end stuff. And then once we have those libraries, then we can explore, building our own wallet or like having other wallets integrate our privacy features. I think there are only like a handful of like privacy wallets, like I guess like Samurai and even then it's like, semi-centralized, all this like mixers and stuff like that. I don't think it's ideal because like, Monero has Cake Wallet, which is great. But even then, it's only a recent development. Zcash, I think they have like Garda, which I haven't actually used yet, but I do believe they have that. So I think we do recognize the importance of having mobile wallets, and it's definitely coming. But we also mindful that lelantus is coming, so we don't want to do too much work there. But luckily, that a lot of the work that we do with the Sigma mobile implementation can be reused for a lelantus implementation as well. So we said, okay, let's get a proof of concept out, let's get it working, and then we can modify for lelantus and have like more investment in time for this. Because, we're quite a small team. We don't have all the resources to do everything. And hopefully with the ZCS, we can get more outside developers working on this with the heavy lifting of the back end. We're all done. Yeah.
So as far as third-party support for private transactions on Zcoin, are there any third-party wallets that support other than
Edge, right? Okay. No, right now, no. We might talk with a couple of others, but obviously budget is a limiter. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. I guess a lot of wallets will ask for essentially a listing fee.
Yeah.
For integration fee.
And I think like Edge is really nice in the sense that they didn't ask for any money whatsoever. They're just like, yeah. So that's pretty cool.
That's cool. Wow. I'm going to have to guys, follow to the audience, follow a link down in the description. So go be supportive of projects that support privacy in this way. This is important.
Yeah, definitely. And actually, we had a little back and forth with Paul because we were like, we wanted to have that Sigma like opt in, opt out. And he's like, no, I wanted privacy on by default. And we discussed it, and he was the one that really pushed us down that path of privacy on by default for the mobile wallet. So I think that's quite cool.
That's awesome. Okay, yeah, I'll be shouting them out on a lot of future videos as well. Future privacy plans. I mean, I think you went over pretty much everything there. Let me ask a couple of personal opinions. We chatted a lot about personal ideology related to privacy and such. Can I just ask, any kind of currency at all? So something that's tangible, something that's digital, something that is notional currency, where it's essentially just, you know, some kind of like contractual obligation. What are your favorite private currencies?
Private currencies. I mean, cash is great, right? But it's kind of cumbersome. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a favorite. I mean, of course, Zcoin. But I mean, like, I don't see any, like, there isn't really anything besides cash and privacy cryptocurrencies that I particularly like. I mean, that's just it, right? Like, those are the only things that kind of try to protect your privacy at all. But of course, you know, I mean, this might sound controversial, and, you know, I don't profess to think that whether how legit Tether is. But Tether is damn useful, and it's pretty interesting. Yeah, it's like cash, but I don't need a bank account to hold it, and that's pretty amazing as it is. And what it is, it still holds value. And how long it'll last, I don't know. And DAI is also pretty interesting, but none of these have privacy features. And I think it remains to be seen how robust these mechanisms are, because, you know, they're all about over collateralization and stuff like that. Well, what happened if Ethereum goes to zero or whatnot, you know, like that sort of thing. But I do think there are very interesting things that need to be explored, and that's why I kind of like Ethereum, like, versus Bitcoin maximalism. Is more like Bitcoin maximalism is like, we should never change, and like Ethereum is like, let's try this all this new funky things, you know. And I mean, like, yeah, there's benefits to both stuff, but I mean, you have a martial arts background, I have a martial arts background, and I come from one of the most stodgy martial arts background, which is Aikido. And, you know, I run an Aikido dojo. I'm a 4th dan black belt, and I've been doing it for over 20 years. But I also do boxing. I'm a licensed trainer in something called Crazy Monkey Defense, which is like a street self-defense MMA type of system. Been doing Muay Thai. I did a little bit of BJJ. So I have had some exposure in Muay Thai as well.
Okay, so when Ken Bosak and I actually arrange Coin Project founder fights, we need to register your hands as lethal weapons.
Yeah, let me fight against Vitalik. I'm not fit Vitalik.
Yeah, if you go down, then we know you will have thrown that fight.
I would definitely beat Justin's son, I think.
Is that a challenge?
I would like to. But yeah, on a more serious note, my point of that was that, you know, Aikido and many of the traditional martial arts is like purity. It will never change. This is how the founder did it, and therefore this must be the most correct way, and no deviation. And this is kind of like the Bitcoin maximality. And when you put it to the test, yeah, they all get creamed, right? Like, you try to use traditional Aikido on the streets, you don't get creamed, you know, like it not.
Yeah, you get grounded and pounded. It's
yeah. And I mean, even like BJJ is effective, but it's only one-on-one, and try to do that on the concrete. Like, I actually know someone that tried to get guard, and he got lifted and slammed into like a pillar. And I mean, like,
well, even Gracie combatives. That's the Gracie school basically admitting that their system didn't work perfectly for defense.
Yeah, cool. So yeah, you know, I draw the analogies that, you know, like, we shouldn't be like just one way is the only way. It's all evolution, right? We have to explore different ideas. There's polarity. We try different things, and then we see what works, what doesn't, and who knows? You know, one of these developments may come into Bitcoin as well. You know, we shouldn't be so religious about it, or like martial arts are religions. It's like like this, some of this like hokey churches where they do this and like everyone flies away, and that's the kind of the same with martial arts, like this no touch throw, and that's the kind of same thing with Bitcoin and all this crypto cults, right? Whatever they say, even though it's ridiculous, people accept it. So
yeah, right. I don't know if you saw the controversy on Twitter. Somebody registered buterin.org.
Oh yeah, okay.
to make fun of the Nakamoto Institute.
So
they said,
I think that's so toxic. Like I don't know, pro BTC and whatnot. I'm like, whatever,
Yeah. Cool. Well, I agree with you. Get rid of the dogma. Just get back to work. there's so many things to fix.
Right.
But so, question about favorite privacy tech. Like, is there something that you think, some kind of privacy tech, whether it's because you ran a VPN company back in 2007, you mentioned.
Still running it, yeah.
So, awesome. So VPNs, clearly you're a believer. Otherwise, you wouldn't be still involved.
I don't know. I mean, it's more of like, I don't think VPN is the best tech. It's just more of lack of a better tech. Because, you're effectively trusting the VPN provider.
Sure. But it sounds like your opinion is that using a VPN sucks less than not using a VPN.
Yes, definitely. And, it's like, it's the ability to choose who I want to trust, right? Like, if I want to protect against my ISP and my government spying, maybe VPNs is good enough, right? Against more sophisticated adversaries, maybe I want to use Tor. Maybe that's not good enough. But yeah, I really like Tor for what it is. I see it as critical part of internet infrastructure, and I think it's great that all these things are being made. And I think it's also great that a lot of browsers are now like looking into like privacy and anti-tracking type of stuff. I like what Signal is doing. I do think that I still have no idea why they require that phone number, which is really annoying.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of funny because there are probably other ways to route Signal. I mean, but I think there's a lot of abuse of SIP in
I don't know. I mean, like some people, they use like the fake, like a throwaway number and then register the signal. But I'm like, look, is there a way that we can do it like Telegram style? I mean, Telegram's privacy sucks, but like, I wish there was a way that I could give my Signal handle to someone without having to give my phone number. That's something that's ongoing. I do think that the stuff with mixed nets are really cool, like what NIM is doing. I haven't looked at their tokenomics, so I can't comment on that, but the technology looks interesting. Loki is doing really interesting things, like utilizing their masternode network to route the messaging. I think that's really cool. But I think, I mean, I did mention that I like PGP, even though it's archaic. There's no logical reason for me liking PGP. It's just that it made me feel special and elite when I finally figured out how to do it, and showing people I got this bunch of encrypted text in my inbox.
Well, I mean, there's value in that too. I mean, as long as it's reasonably true that you actually are reasonably private.
Yeah, I don't think there's only like one tool that I do think like stuff like end-to-end encryption, like cloud storage with end-to-end encryption would be really good. There are a couple of providers that do that. I use something called pCloud, which has like a crypto folder, which is end-to-end encrypted, and I wish we had more of that because now we are like putting so much data on the cloud, and like recently we found out that Apple is scanning all our photos for child pornography. I'm like, well, wow, that's one thing.
That's okay. That's new. Yeah. Apple talking about how they're such champions of privacy.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's like, what percentage of the population do child pornography? I think it's really small. And what are we sacrificing to catch these guys?
Yeah. No, good call. So sounds like PGP then is the underrated archaic hero then in your life.
No, I don't think it's good. But actually, I recently started looking into Graphene OS, which is a hardened version of Android that you can install on certain Pixel phones, and that looks like I wish more projects like that existed. We need privacy alternatives that are usable, That means that I can still use my Android stuff, but have much more privacy features on top of that. Because we don't have any options right now.
Sure. Well, it sounds like something like Graphene OS that could be installed on reasonably low cost burners too would be awesome, because then you could do that burner sim to generate something for Signal. And again, just thinking of, my mind goes to a friend of mine who has family in Venezuela, or a friend of mine who has family in India, and thinking about some of these markets where latest Pixel is not going to be an option for them.
Yeah. I think the latest Pixel is very silly. I mean, they require the face unlock. They remove the fingerprint thing. So I don't know how it works at night. And all my banking apps don't use face unlock, so you still have to use the fingerprint.
Sure. Well, I mean, I'm sure a lot of them have an IR cut filter on a secondary sensor, and that they've got the tiniest bit of illumination, so that they actually doing the tiniest bit of quasi 3D mapping of your face. But I don't know, I'm a little bit of an image processing nerd, so there are ways. That's been Microsoft cracked that nut with some of their first generation Lumia phones when they first bought the brand. But
yeah, it's a really pity that the Lumia phones.
yeah, I
they're
mean,
quite so nice. Yeah.
But I mean, just saying that's been around for a little bit of time, but it's still disappointing to have that be like the biometric, like face biometric unlock be the only option.
Yeah,
that seems dumb.
I mean, I don't know. I'm really worried about like all this data that we can't control. It's like, you know, when I started trying to be more privacy conscious, trying to reduce my usage of Facebook, or like stop Google from doing this and that, I realized, wow, it's really hard. Like, you want to be connected to people. Like, if I had a choice, I wouldn't use WhatsApp, but I can't. Everyone uses WhatsApp, you know, and I was like thinking, well, how, you know, like recently there was that exploit that allowed the missed call with WhatsApp, and then they could gain access to your phone. And you know, I have someone who works in the cybersecurity industry that sells these exploits to governments, and he's like, that's only like the basic one. There are others that can still do that. I mean, like, okay, so how do I do this? And he's like, oh, run it in some container and whatnot. And I'm like, gosh, you know, I wish this was a lot easier.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, I appreciate you chatting about privacy. And to your point, yeah, groups like NSO, and everybody knows their name now because of exploits like that. I mean, not everybody knew their name before that story broke, but then all the other black hats, they like you were talking about the banks, right? Getting a slap on the wrist for the crimes essentially that they committed, financial crimes that they committed, and then companies like NSO, oh, well, we don't think that we sold to anybody bad, but we don't know who they sold it to.
No, the worst thing was they actually found out that most of the WhatsApp targets, they were not terrorists. They were journalists and government officials. So, you know, yeah, selling it to government, but you know, the governments obviously have their own agenda, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate these chats on privacy. I appreciate you being willing to take so much time out of your schedule to be able to talk about not just Zcoin, but also privacy. Yeah, right. Yeah, well, for both on the record and off the record chat, I mean, I appreciate all of it. It's been just an absolute blast. Let me ask you, as far as where the best point of contact is, where you'd like for people to contact the Zcoin project, and how the best way is to approach members of the project to either contribute or ask questions. What's the best way?
I mean, our Telegram community is the best way to reach out to us. Of course, you know, we have a relatively active GitHub, but I think Telegram is where the community is. And, you know, we go to zcoin.io. You know, we have a YouTube channel, but we are pretty active on Twitter. So I think if you have Telegram and Twitter, I think that will give you a really good idea of what we are and getting involved. So yeah, I think those are the best two ways. But one of the questions that you asked, which I really want to answer again, which was, where do you see privacy, like in an ideal scenario? And I felt that, you know, where I felt like in an ideal world, our private data, we can treat it almost like our brain, where we can choose what we choose to reveal. You know, like, you're not going to give like full access to my thoughts or anything like that. That would be like a horrible type of world where I don't know how people would survive. But I guess that would be a utopian future where I can choose what I want to review. And that's how we should view privacy, not as something to hide, but it's more about, it's like our brains. We don't want our thoughts and our most private things to be public for everybody to look at.
That's a really great way of putting that. And hopefully more people can get behind that interpretation of privacy and then build what's necessary to make that future.
We need more black swan events. We need more Snowdens. We need more like massive data leaks to trigger that awareness, unfortunately.
So you're saying we still have a lot of things to see that are broken. There's a lot of messy
like if not for Snowden, I think a lot of these things wouldn't even be to the forefront, right? I mean, like he's a controversial figure, but you have to say that he brought a lot of stuff to light that made people aware about this whole privacy thing, and it's only because of him. So kudos to that.
Yeah, definitely agreed. Anybody who's watching who can pull any sway, free Snowden, pardon Snowden, let him go home. Poor guy. But last question, and this is very, very serious. Can I borrow 50,000 ETH? I'll give you a token in exchange.
I think that's a great idea. I'm not that rich though, but
I kid. So again, just for the record, was this a paid bounty? Have I asked you for any actual Zcoin? Have I asked you for a bounty for this interview?
Yeah, definitely not.
Wow, you haven't. Throw me under the bus.
I mean, like, look, it's a privacy coin even if we give you. No. But you haven't asked for anything. I mean, this was just a Twitter thing. You reached out, or rather, like you just posted a Twitter post, and is there anyone who wants to book a slot? And I just went in and booked a slot at 6:30 a.m. in the morning. So for me, so yeah.
Awesome. Just making it clear that I always make the joke about about pinching projects for a little bit of money, but yeah, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it again. Thank you so much for being so generous with diversifying the topics that we talked about. And I can't wait to circle back and hear updates on the project. I'm really excited about your roadmap.
Thank you so much, Seth, and it was a pleasure to be on.